Okay, so we're going to import the file that we just created. And if you turned all of your fonts into objects and so forth and so on, it's going to load everything into your Glowforge app here. Now the placement of my jig on the bottom is not important yet. Okay, so what you're going to do with this whole thing highlighted here is you're going to use your little ruler down here to place your design. So all this ruler does down here is this is showing the X and Y coordinates from this position on the Glowforge, and this is showing an object that is this size by this size. So if I change the dot here, you see the numbers change because based on where it is right now, it's this far from the center. So in order to be consistent, you need to work off of the same thing. So as you can see here, if I move this, it changes everything. So what you're going to do with everything highlighted is you're going to put in your particular numbers that you used when you created your jig. So we're going to saunter over here to the Glowforge. So when you create a jig, what you're doing is creating a stationary spot where you're telling the Glowforge that you're putting something. So this is the jig that I cut, and when I cut it, I uploaded her file into the app and set the coordinates in the exact same way that we're going to do with the design. But a couple of things you want to do whenever you're placing wood for a jig, because you need to be able to be exactly consistent, like to the millimeter every single time. Because with something as large as like a glass plate, it's not going to matter. But for something that's very small like a watch, even a little bit of distance off is going to make a difference. So when I put my wood in here to cut the jig to begin with, I marked this little piece of washi tape here. So I line up my jig with the bottom of this every time. Make sure it is perfect on both sides every single time. And then I use the honeycomb pins to hold it in place once I've done that. So you're going to put your pins in and you're going to lock this into place so this is where it's going to be, which we'll do in just a moment. But nevertheless, I keep all this stuff on a post-it note on the jig so I don't ever lose it. So what we're going to do here is with all of this highlighted, we're going to change our numbers to the numbers we used in the first place. 396. Now, what I found out is that the numbers that I used initially were slightly off on the length of the band, but not enough where it's made any kind of difference. So, and then when you're changing this bottom one, this little dude here is really important. That's your aspect ratio. So right now it's unlocked, which means I can change these two independently. But if you lock it, if you change one, it's going to change the other to keep your same proportion. So you want to make sure that that's unlocked. Otherwise, you're just going to change numbers in a circle. That's a 5-5. Okay, so with everything in here right now, these watches are going to print exactly where I want them to print every single time because I'm using exactly the same numbers every time. So I'm gonna go line up my jig and get it pinned down, but since I need both hands for that. But what you're gonna do once you've done that is you're gonna take the step of your watches here and you're going to ignore it. So it still shows on the shadow, but it's not gonna do anything with it. Now, you can see here where the outlines don't look like they're gonna be lined up and all of that. As long as the numbers are the same, it will line up every time. So I'm gonna go pin down my jig and then I'll show you what that looks like.